Today on Locked On Red Wings, Filip Hronek is now the next guy injured, and it was apparently a controversial hit. Red Wings end up losing that game 4-1 to the Minnesota Wild, and now are losers of 4. We're going to talk about that all on today's episode of Locked On Red Wings.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for the Daily J, and Scotty is the host of the Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News.
Yeah, man, I'm with you.
I spent the entire game so upset over
I was very angry
everything.
Pretty much like 50 minutes of that game. I was very upset. Yeah.
I mean, you go into that game knowing you're down Dylan Larkin already, and then immediately Ryan Reaves just nails Filip Hronek in the head. And then I think there are two reasons I think why that is such a... The fact that there was no call was insane to me, but the fact that this is even a divisive topic to me blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind.
We're just
Scotty.
jumping right into it.
We got to.
I'm down. No, I'm down.
It's the story of the game. And
Yeah,
I mean, there's
absolutely.
other storylines in this game as well. But this is the game. This is the storyline. And
100%.
I don't know, man. I'm sure I can go on a monologue, so I kind of want to let you have the floor first and hear your opinions because I know how I feel. And then once we feel how you feel, I'll see how to respond to that, I guess.
Yeah. So, the weirdly became controversial and weirdly was like, oh, is it a clean hit? Is it not? And I think a lot of people got way too caught up in the like head on a swivel. Where was he looking when the hit happened? Was his head up or whatnot? When in actuality, none of that matters if first contact is with the head.
Yep.
None of that is important. Like all of that goes completely out the window if you lead with your elbow or shoulder and your first contact is with the opponent's head, which is objectively what happened. So I don't care. People were like trying to find like screenshots of like, oh, like at this exact moment, like his head was up or like, you know, his head's down here. And like all of that is moot if the first contact is with the head, which again is objectively what happened. So it was all ridiculous to me. And the fact that there was nothing on the ice and then honestly, then it just kind of like spiraled. And
if
like
they would have made a
the
call there.
Right. Like that's part of that's more of like the game recap than like just talking about this hit. But like that happened. And then we got like 3 penalties and like they're probably like deservedly. I'm not saying that like we didn't earn those, but like then like we kept getting penalized and like we were trying to retaliate. And then like the fact of the matter is we don't have anyone on the ice in this game that can stand up to Ryan Reaves. Like whether you like him or not, whether the hit was dirty or clean, that's a subjective, whatever, you have your own opinion on that. The fact of the matter is after it happened, he just kept bullying you because he could.
Yep.
And there was no one on this team that could prevent it. Sherratt tried at one point, ended up getting thrown to the ice and landing on his face. Seider had a pretty big hit at one point, but like that certainly wasn't going to turn into a fight or anything. Reaves just had his way physicality wise with the entire Red Wings team. And it showed. You got completely bullied for 60 minutes. And it started obviously with that hit.
Well, what's insane to me about this whole thing with Ryan Reaves is just that, and you said it, is one, yes, Filip Hronek looked behind him, looked to his side, was doing everything but looking up the ice at the player coming at him. And that is his fault. He has to have awareness. But
sure.
Like you said, Scotty, none of that matters when the principal point of contact is to the head. It is on the player doing the hitting to make sure they do not hit the head. The amount of victim blaming I have seen over this hit is crazy. Like, it's okay to get hit in the head. And this is the argument I've heard out of so many people. It is okay to be hit in the head if you're not looking. That's not true. That is not what the NHL is trying to do. That's not how any of this works. The rule book states, the amount of people I had quote retweet me, and I don't argue with people. I don't argue with people on Twitter about this kind of stuff. I know better, but the amount of quote retweets I would see about how you don't know how the rules work, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yes, I do. When the principal contact is to the head, it is a penalty. And we saw screenshots, we saw slow-mo replays of a perfect angle where Ryan Reaves led, and if I want to play devil's advocate, yes, he tucked his shoulder or tucked his elbow. He did. Yeah. But his shoulder made first contact with Filip Hronek's head. There is no room for debate on that. I saw people on both sides of the argument from all walks of life. Art Regner was saying suspension. Ken Cowell was getting into it with a parody account of Don Sweeney on Twitter, whether or not it was going to be a suspension. Ken Cowell thought it was. But then you get Darren McCarty and Bobby Ryan both saying that's not a suspension because Hronek should have had his head up. And like, I'm not going to sit here and try and argue with former.
Right. Well, even like some of them was like a point that was going around Twitter, especially, and just like, I mean, they talked about it like on air too, weirdly, but like the big conversation was like, oh, 30 years ago, that's a clean hit. Now it's not. And like, that was everybody's debate. It was like, oh, well, that used to be a clean hit. And it's like, well, we're not playing in 1995. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like cool. That's great. Like you can go, have that take. Good for you. But like this is not, the 90s anymore. And like they a lot of people acknowledge that. We're like, yeah, this used to be clean, but like I don't understand the point in even bringing that up. Like, okay, cool.
It didn't ever used to be clean. The rules just allowed for it.
Right.
That like people saying it used to be a clean hit. It was never a clean hit. Whenever there's a point, and I get that the idea of what a clean hit is and isn't has changed, but it used to be allowed back in hockey. That used to be considered in the realm of what a clean hit was, but it's not a clean hit. Whenever you rock somebody's head, that's not a clean hit. You're going to cause lifelong problems. So we can't, on one hand, sit here and say that we want to get rid of like concussions, and then we were worried about CTE on one hand, and then the other hand say it's okay that Ryan Reaves hit Filip Hronek in the head because he wasn't looking. And that is on Filip Hronek to make sure that he is looking and being aware, but it's not on him to not get hit in the head. The amount of people I said that he had it coming because he wasn't looking is ridiculous. It is on Ryan Reaves to ensure he does not make head contact, and he did. That is a cut and dry penalty, no matter what way you slice it. And then you get people. So I saw this perfect screenshot. I know you said, like, I don't care about the screenshots, but I saw this perfect screenshot that showed the moment he made contact, shoulder to head. I had somebody circle that and go, look at, he makes body to body contact. Meanwhile, Filip Hronek tried to look against his shoulder. And I'm like,
right,
what is going on? Like, what are you seeing? And I also understand that in the moment, like, it's easy to freeze frame. It's easy to take a frame and pull it and be like, look it. But, and I saw arguments also going on saying that, you wouldn't have seen that on the ice live. I'm like, what? Yeah, we did. We all saw it live. And then we saw it on replay. They reviewed like,
okay, cool.
The fact that Reaves walked away from that without a penalty astounds me. And I do expect, I don't know if I expect it, but there should be some kind of punishment coming down, because that was a ridiculously dangerous hit to play on Filip Hronek. And again, he needs to be on the lookout, but it's not on him to avoid a head contact hit.
Right. It's not on him to avoid a hit. It is on him to avoid a hit. It's not on him to avoid a hit to the head.
Yeah.
That's what this whole that's the point of all of this. Like, yes, obviously he needs to have his head on a swivel and he needs to look up because he's going to keep getting hit hard. That's all very fine and dandy and true, but getting hit directly in the head, and again at first contact and all that is not something that is part of this argument.
And then, like you said at the end of your first comments you made about this whole situation, it's even more frustrating when you take into account how banged up the Red Wings already are, and then know that they have nobody on their roster that can respond to it. You're sitting there and you're watching the game and you just know they're going to run you over. I mean, you have Moritz Seider can lay bodies out, and he did in this game. Ben Sherratt tried, and I bet Ben Sherratt is a physical player, and he lost his footing and slid down. It was embarrassing, but I appreciate the effort.
No, yeah,
but
I do too.
You don't have anyone who can respond to that, and your roster's so banged up that you can't respond with scoring. I mean, this is how many games in a row have the Red Wings scored? We bet the under. I bet the under. You bet the over. How many games in a row now have the Red Wings hit less than or more than one goal? So they lost 4-1. They lost 1-0. They lost 3-2. They lost 5-1. They haven't scored since the game against the Lightning. They have not scored more than 2 goals in a game. They got nothing, man. They got nothing. And we'll continue this conversation about just the game in general. We'll try to move away from the Hronek stuff. We kind of set our pieces. We'll talk about the game in general on the other side of this. But first, I do got to talk to you guys today about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, news, stats, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline. It's where the game starts. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are finally about to actually break down the game. We got away from the play that happened in the first period. We kind of got our frustrations out. But yeah, Red Wings are losers 4-1 this time. You know what's crazy? So obviously they're very banged up. Their roster is crazy thin right now. You had Michael Rasmussen starting line center number 1 out there for you. But in the second and third period, they actually at 5-on-5, not even counting the power plays, they actually outshot and outchanced the Minnesota Wild. They had an abysmal first because they were flustered after that big hit, but they started to recuperate.
They had like 6 shots after the first or something wild. Yeah, it was a low number after period 1 for sure.
Yeah, but they started to regroup in the second and third period.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought, fine. In fact, defensively, I thought they looked fine too, but you just ran into another team which with the amount of scoring chances you had, or not scoring chances, but shooting attempts you had, Minnesota Wild did a great job of keeping those chances on the outside of the zone and blocking shots. It felt like every time the Red Wings got into the slot, it was right into the shin pads of a defender.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think that just as a whole in this game, yes, the second period, they definitely regained their footing a little bit, but I didn't think the third was very competitive either. I think that was just kind of we tried to claw back. It didn't work. Kind of not a rollover. We've seen a rollover in the third from this team, and that was certainly not what this was. But I didn't think the third was very close either. So you're just kind of sandwiching a good period between 2 not very good and competitive periods. And I mean, really the biggest thing that I think was just very clear throughout this game was again, that there was just a big moment that happened early. Everybody got flustered. They tried to regroup, but at the end of the day, no one was able to respond. And I mean, really for all 3 periods, Reaves was just kind of able to do whatever he wanted to the Red. I mean, he had several big hits and none that even came close to the Hronek thing, and the other ones were all pretty clean. But yeah, I mean, he was really just able to kind of have his way. And again, like we talked about, Sherratt at one point got kind of tired of it and tried to hold his ground or whatever. But I mean, you had Reaves flexing to the crowd in the middle of the game. It's
embarrassing.
You know what I mean?
It's embarrassing.
Right. Yeah. What do you get? You just got, manhandled for 60 minutes pretty much. And just really, I think the word is just frustrating. Just an unbelievably frustrating game. I'm sure it was insanely frustrating to play. It was unbelievably frustrating to watch. I had to mute the TV at one point because I couldn't. The broadcasting was frustrating. I mean, that was it was brutal. As a Red Wings fan, I'm sure it was entertaining if you were a third party, and I'm sure you were loving life if you're a Wild fan. As a Red Wings fan, that was absolutely brutal to sit through.
Can we? You mentioned the broadcast there, and that's something I meant to bring up on period one. The amount of they also were the entire game just siding with the Minnesota Wild on about every play. And I normally am one who I think when it comes to broadcasting, people usually like immediately pick up on one thing and then they ride it through the whole game, even if it's not true, and according to like in the tune of like biases. But this was a game where it definitely felt like the entire game, it almost felt like the broadcast team was rooting for the Minnesota Wild, and they were not just in support of the Ryan Reaves hit, but they were blaming Filip Hronek. And they did it during the intermission, and then they talked about the hit for literally 10 minutes into the first period, to a point where I was even like, can we just please stop talking about it? Yeah. Here I am talking about it, but that, of course, is part of my job. I can't not talk about it. But the broadcast, it was brutal.
There's a hockey game being played, and we're still talking about something that happened like in real time, like 25 minutes ago.
There's two teams on the ice, and they're only talking about the one team, talking about how great they are. And it's just, it was really frustrating. And for the Red Wings, I tweeted this out, Scotty. I think we're in for a few weeks of very unfun Red Wings hockey, just because it gets to a point with, and I know we always say, everyone loves to say, you can't use injuries as an excuse, but you legitimately, if you lose Filip Hronek and now Ole Mata's out as well, or was already out, that's your best defensive pairing.
Question mark still right now, obviously.
Yeah. You're missing your best defensive pairing. Robert Haig's hurt, so now Kampfer is guaranteed to get ice time, which, good for Kampfer, but still, you're missing 3 of your top 6, more of your middle and bottom 9. It's just, what can we do? I mean, go out there, grind it out, hope to get a few wins, but this is an incredibly tough stretch of hockey for the Red Wings, and they are lacking the Red Wings. The Red Wings don't have their players.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you're preaching to the choir. This is something that we talked about earlier this week, and how it, we were talking about before Larkin got hurt, and how like thin this team was, and what's it going to look like when players start getting healthy again. And, this is a really thinned out team. And now, even since that conversation, I mean, we've had 2 more substantial, like one of your highest producing defensemen and your literal captain have now gotten hurt, even since that conversation at the beginning of the week. So, yeah, man, these last 2 games, honestly, have just been like really bottom of the barrel, worst case scenario type stuff for this team.
You're completely right, man. And we haven't really talked about a lot about the gates. We're just talking about our frustrations really so far. And that's well warranted in my opinion.
Reaves' response was, quote, "Don't skate at me like that, but hopes Hronek is okay after game."
Okay. I don't even want to talk about it. In terms of things we saw that we liked, I liked the heart out of this thin roster, but I really liked Moritz Seider in this hockey game. I thought Moritz Seider, had a fantastic game. Ended up with a even 50% Corsi for percentage at 5-on-5. Moritz Seider, Scotty, played 29.5 minutes in this game, because at one point the team had 4 defensemen. Sherratt was gone for 5 minutes because of fighting, and Hronek was hurt. Moritz Seider did it all. He played physical. He played well defensively. He played well offensively. He stepped up into plays, had great breakouts, had great break-ins. He stopped zone entries. This was probably the best Moritz Seider performance with the eye test that I've seen all season long. And it was really reassuring to see. And it almost makes me think that maybe Moritz Seider needs there to be a little bit of an extra edge to the game for him to really get into it. Like, does the game, or he have to have like an edge to him to really get in the zone? Because he laid that one hit out along the boards. He had, was it Foligno come at him right after he laid that hit out? He reverse hit him. Now, he didn't knock him down, but still laid the body back out. I'm like, this is vintage Seider. This is what we saw last year. I thought Moritz Seider was really good in this game. And at 29.5 minutes, damn, does he deserve some credit. So there's not a lot of silver linings in this game, but he was numero uno, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree that he was definitely a big plus in this game, and I thought that I agree with everything you said. He looked better than he had. Not that he's looked bad necessarily, but I thought that he looked really solid. I thought that pairing as a whole, man, I didn't think Sherratt looks terrible, and he was trying to do the same thing. Like, to his credit, whether it was effective or not is whatever, but both of them were at least trying to at least did play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder the rest of the game. So I think that's definitely, there's like two bright spots for me in this game, and Sider's one of them. Yeah.
Nah, Sherrod had a 74.63 expected goals for percentage in this game at 5-on-5. So
Yeah.
at 5, even strength, he did a nice job of preventing chances in his own zone. That was probably one of the best performances we've seen out of that pair. And I think it is because they had that edge to them. I think it's because there was a fire in this game. And it's interesting to see going forward at how them as a pair can kind of replicate that fire to see if we can get some of that to continue. We got to get to another break here, but when we come back, we'll continue this conversation as there's a couple more shout outs I want to give. Elmer Soderblom playing his first game back from injury at / Grand Rapids. And then, of course, Magnus Hellberg got his first start of the season with the Detroit Red Wings. We'll talk about that when we come back. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about driving drunk and why you shouldn't do it. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you maybe even kill somebody. Everyone knows the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that doesn't stop people from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan a ride ahead. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Thank you, Scotty. Because God knows I really want to go back in time and talk more about this game. Elmer Soderblom played his first game with the Red Wings after injury. He got sent down to Grand Rapids. Larkin got hurt, immediately got called back up. I think he played like 1 or 2 games down there in GR, though. He was really, really good in this game. He obviously scored the lone goal. But if you look at every advanced metric, he led the team. Shot attempts for shot attempts for shot attempts against. Your Corsi. 9 Corsi for 5 Corsi against for 64.29 percentage. That's a relative of 20 to his teammates. You go to expected goals for, where you quantify those or qualify those. He's best on the team at 84.31 in this game. 0.51 expected goals for. 0.09 expected goals against. What did we talk about with Elmer Soderblom is the one thing he had to do to really earn his spot on the roster, Scotty?
Play defense.
He led the team in expected goals against at 0.09. And he was all over. He looked like he had that fire in him as well, that he wanted to earn his spot back on this team.
Yeah, he looked really good. And I think you can pinpoint the play that led up to the goal as like that is the epitome of everything he brings to a hockey team in one 10-second play, right? Like he forechecks really hard, throws his stick out there, knocks down a pass, gains possession, does a really nice move to get to the right side, passes across, brilliant pass, gets back to him. He's right in front of the net, buries the net. Like that is everything. That was every facet of NHL hockey, all by one player in 10 seconds. And that is, for as much of a downer as this game was, that was absolutely beautiful and spectacular. And he deserves a ton of credit. Really, again, the entire game. It wasn't just that play. He looked really, really solid. But he really showed you everything that he can bring, being that size and that coming at you on a forecheck is such a nice, intangible, I guess you'd call it skill to have, being that size and being able to rush somebody like that. And just throw your stick down and knock down a pass. So yeah, I mean, he was absolutely stellar, and that play specifically really just showed you everything that he is capable of doing all in one play, and it was really a beauty.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's most impressive is when you look at expected goals for and expected goals against, you have to take into account too where the bulk of their shift starts are coming. On the fly, offensive zone, neutral zone, defensive zone. Where are they coming from? And this is all at even strength. But he had the third most defensive zone starts in this game on the team. He had 5 defensive zone shift starts in this game, only second to Adam Ernie and Ben Sherratt, who had 6 and 7 respectively. I also want to mention that the 3 players at the top of the charts here at expected goals for percentage, Elmer Soderblom, second Adam Ernie, third Ben Sherratt, led the team in defensive zone shift starts, which is, I mean, a testament to how well they played, that they had the best ratio of quality shot attempts on the team and got the most defensive shift zone starts. Like, they weren't starting in the offensive zone in pressure and prime opportunities. They had to earn it by getting out of the defensive zone and stopping shots against.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that was also something that I thought they tightened up a lot in the second period. You know, we talked about that earlier, but this was not a terrible, like, the Wings got blown off the ice game. Like, that's not exactly what this was. It was just they it was just brutal, man. Like, it was just brutal. It wasn't like they got absolutely, just like pure outplayed for 60. Like, there was some moments to take away from this game for sure, but it just, I guess, demoralizing is the word.
It is.
You never had like a high morale in this game, and you never felt like the mojo or the momentum was ever on the Wings side.
How are you supposed to realistically expect your team to go out there and beat these teams when you have your third and fourth line guys playing first and second line, and then you have your
Yeah, no,
AHL guys
I'm
playing
with
third
you.
and fourth line? And again, I understand, like, you can't use injuries as an excuse, right? That's what people always say. But it does get to a point where you're like, okay, well, it definitely is a factor, right? It's definitely a factor.
Yeah,
And
you
I thought
can't use injuries as an excuse. Thing is I, I,
and it's not like they
like,
haven't been playing
everyone
hard.
does. Yes, you can. I'm like, I'm sorry, but like,
It's not.
everyone always has forever. Like, that's again, and like, there's a difference between, can you accommodate for 1 or 2 injuries versus, like, hey, how about we take the entire top half of your roster and, like, you find a way to still win.
But
And,
the
like,
thing
you already were probably barely a playoff team, or like a fringe, right there on the fringe, even when fully healthy.
The thing is it's not even like they're not trying. I mean,
No,
this guy
yeah,
outside of the Panthers game, like the game against the Stars, they played well for a period and a half. Game against the Hurricanes, they played well. The Hurricanes are just oppressive defensively.
for sure.
Minnesota Wild, the second and the third period, they outshot the Minnesota Wild. It's not like the team's not trying and not putting out the effort. It's just their skill is not there because they're too banged up. It's just an amalgamation of frustration because this team's fully healthy. The outlook's different. You go into this game, you think, maybe even expect to beat the Minnesota Wild because, and I compared the starting lineups. I put a tweet out comparing the starting lineups from the second game against the Devils, or the second game of the season, the first one against the Devils, and
Right.
tonight's game, and it's just night and day how much talent you've lost to the injured reserve. So it's one of those things where I'm incredibly frustrated, but I'm not frustrated at the effort level. I'm not. I'm
No,
frustrated at
agreed.
just the circumstances.
Agreed.
Let's talk
Agreed.
about Magnus Hellberg. He got his first start as a Red Wing this season. He already had one last season. I was, to put it bluntly, whelmed. Like, I wasn't
Yeah.
impressed, but
No, I mean, like, look,
he was,
I don't know.
he was
Like,
fine.
everyone was so quick to bring in, like, a, anybody but Ned type of mindset, and who knows what the future of the backup goaltender holds for the Detroit Red Wings for the remainder of the season. That's yet to be seen. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, this is a guy that's been waived by, like, several teams just over the past, like, 6 months. Like, this is, he's to put it in baseball terms, he's like a 4A player.
No,
Like,
he's a
that,
fringe backup. That is
right.
that is
Yeah.
the
Like,
NHL
that's,
definition.
and so, like, everybody, super pumped to, like, see somebody besides a Ned back there just because of how slow of a season he started off with. But yeah, I'm not sure that, like, oh, this is going to be some masterclass. And like, I don't think he looked bad. I really don't.
No.
I don't think he looked terrible. I
I
don't.
think he had one softie, and that was the Zuccarello goal.
Yeah, I agree. And then there was one empty netter.
That's not on
My
him.
thing is, I don't watch this game and then immediately afterwards feel like, oh my goodness, get Ned out of here. Like, this is the backup goalie now. That's all. Like that was
No.
pretty par for the course for a backup goalie. Yeah. I mean,
Like-
pretty, I don't know, status quo. Sure.
This was always in the cards for this game. Like we saw Magnus Hellberg last year, and we saw that the Wings won, but he wasn't necessarily good in the game. But based on what he had done in the one game with Ottawa, and what he had done in his tenure with Grand Rapids, he absolutely deserved a shot, because at least that short of a track record was better than what we had seen out of Nedeljkovic recently. So I don't want to do revisionist history and be like, oh, we should have started net. I absolutely still think we should have gave Magnus the shot in net, because Nedeljkovic hasn't been playing well.
I still support the decision. I was pumped about it. I was still excited about the decision. Yeah.
I think it makes it really interesting next time you need to go to a backup, who you go to.
Right.
But
that's where the big question is.
That's for Lalone, because at this point, hands up in the air. I don't know anymore. Have to edit that out. I'll bleep it. I won't cut it out, but I'll bleep it. It just is like your hands up go in the air. It's going to be Husso. I thought it was interesting is your goalies in this game were Magnus Hellberg and Nedeljkovic. Husso got the night off. Like, he got the night off.
Right. He was like not dressed. Yeah.
He was like, I just put my feet up, because he knew Lalone's probably like, we got two goalies. Like, if this gets out of hand, the game's already over anyways. Let's not have Husso go in the net cold. So like, I support this decision, but yeah, that about covers everything. I don't know if there's any other shout outs I want to give to any individual player.
No, I think that's about it. I think that's everything.
Got to convert on your power plays.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens with the hit. That's obviously the story of the game. Outside of the game, it wasn't a dreadful, like, terrible performance where you got necessarily outplayed end to end, but you definitely got out physicality and it showed. So
all right. Well,
we ball though.
We ball. We'll be back tomorrow with a game preview and a little bit more. So stay tuned. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.